after a long stretch with no results, they go out on their own time to continue with the investigation. Those are just a few things I really got a kick out of, because I love cop movies, NYPD Blue, Homicide, Life on the Streets, Law and Order, all the Law and Order movies, so this is a classic. And the other thing I wanted to mention, just to keep you, I mean, maybe you thought of this too, but a lot of movies and TV shows came up after this. The French Connection 2, the 7 Ups, which also stars Roy Scheider, The Streets of San Francisco, which starred Carl Malden and not Gene Hackman, and is set in San Francisco and not New York. Obviously, the Law and Order, which I mentioned, Lethal Weapon franchise, Dirty Harry movies, Police Academy, Columbo, Stakeout, another Stakeout, and the list goes on. So I hope you'll watch this and enjoy it, and stay for questions and answers with Randy after. He's got a friend, Dion, an experienced journalist and interviewer, who's going to be leading the conversation. So,
hi, I'm Dion Baya. I'm a glorified film buff as well, and I oddly, serendipitously met Randy through a mutual friend, and I realized growing up that I'd seen him in all these movies. And Randy's kind of lived two different lives. He is was in Pork Chop Hill, the Korean War, as well as he was an NYPD homicide detective in some of the worst times you could possibly think of in New York City in the 60s and 70s. His book, Circle of Six, is a great book that is highly recommended for anyone who hasn't read it. 2006, a true-to-life thriller based on his life and one of the most famous cases in NYPD New York City history. And Randy ended up getting into the film business just by accident, because he worked on this case that this film was based off of. And they wrote a book about it, and then when William Friedkin went to do it, he was just accidentally paired with Randy, and Randy then started this illustrious career, which ended up, Randy went on to do stuff like The Godfather. He's in Total Scene, Kill Sonny. He's ends up being in Sorcerer, another huge William Friedkin movie that's getting revitalization right now. He shows up in Superman. He's in The Brink's Job. He's in the 7 Ups, which was mentioned as well, even into the 80s up until Donnie Brasco. So he has a very illustrious career as well. And I'd like to bring Randy up just to give a few words about the picture as an intro.
What you're going to see here, you know, especially what happens on the train, what happens in the car chase, at that particular time, what you're going to see is REAL, and it's transferred to REEL. It went from being real to real. Today, they make movies, they call them green screens, computers. You'll have a car chase where a car misses a car by 2 feet. They stop it with the computer and put it right on over to where you think you've just missed it by about a couple of inches. So what you're going to see here is not that. What you're going to see is the real thing. This car chase for the past 7 years has been on a cable show, and it's called The 10 Greatest Car Chases Ever Put on Film. This film has always been this car chase #1. Please enjoy the film.
to stop in the next station. That's the break, and I blow you in out. I don't know, sound boy, relax. Help! Help, you all right? Hey, Coke, you all right? I'm sure. Coke, you all right? Get back. Relax. Turn right now. Going. You're not gonna get away with this. Put the gun down. Get back! Come on now, I said get back! You can't get away with it. Stop!
I was working, this case truly happened in the very late 60s. His name was Patsy Fuca. And it was a case that took 7 months. In the end, there was 180 detectives working on it. But basically, the case was made by the two that you see there, Sonny Grasso and Eddie Egan. Sonny Grasso and I grew up together. We became cops together. We went to Korea together. When we seized the drugs, we did not seize all of the drugs in the car. A lot of the drugs were seized out in Brooklyn. In fact, they were putting it up in the ceiling, and the people had the blow torches heating up the ceiling so that the drugs wouldn't fall out. What's not shown here as a credit to the feds, and remember, We're talking of the original case in 1969. The feds seized in Grand Central $490,000. It was $10,000 short of $500,000 because that's the mule he got for carrying that money. That would roughly be about $3.5 million today worth. The drugs that we seize, there have been bigger quantity, but never better quality. That was true. It was 89% pure. It could be stepped on 7 times. Normally, we would get a kilo, which was worth about $8 grand then. Today it's worth 110 to 115. You could only step on it 4 times. After that, it's so disintegrated with the baby powder and all the stuff that the quinine that they put in there. I mean, it's not heroin anymore. That was pure. If you never had a seizure that pure. Everybody in that case basically got away. Frog 1 went back to Marseille. That's where we filmed it, the movie in Marseille. All of the scenes here were in Brooklyn, on the Brooklyn Bridge, in New York City. Some of the streets where we got them in the very beginning, where you see them as Santa Claus, and they are, we were born there, and we were raised there, so we went back to film there. When we were filming the picture, everything is rehearsed. So this one I'm taking the blame for, or the credit for. When I saw the rehearsal of, remember when the train stops and he loses his gun and he comes off and Gene Hackman comes off and Gene Hackman has a gun and Gene Hackman shoots him in the back. Well, when I saw that rehearsal, that was out in Brooklyn, I ran to the director, who else, and I said, there's somebody I want to bring up here just for a moment. Chris, would you come up, please? Please, Chris. This is Chris D'Antoni. Chris D'Antoni and I have done movies together. We wrote them, we produced them together, we raised the money together, we cried together. His father won the Academy Award for producing this picture, The French Connection. His father also produced the Steve McQueen movie that had the bullet, the famous car chase. So I saw this rehearsal, and you know, Gene Hackman goes and he shoots him, the guy rolls down the stairs. So I go over to the director and I say, wait a second, you know, that's murder. What are you talking about? I said, that's murder. I said, you know, Eddie's my partner. I said, and you have him shooting an unarmed guy in the back. I said, and the guy's got his hands up, that's murder. And he says to me, it is not, you'll see it's going to be okay. And I really dug in with this and I said, look. And he said, you're not making this film, I'm making this film, and that's how we're going to do it. I said, okay. So fast forward, and we have the premiere, and there's 1,200 people out in the audience. And I'm standing in the back, I'm standing with Eddie Egan, I'm standing with Sonny Grasso, and we're watching it, and I say, watch this. And of course, at the end of the chase, Gene Hackman gets out, and he shoots him in the back. Silence for a moment. 1,200 people screaming and applauding. Billy runs up to me and he says, it works for them, and it worked for me. I hope it effing works for you. Not only that, but delivered to my house is the poster, and he signed it, of where Gene Hackman, as far as I'm concerned, is murdering this guy. And it's signed by Billy Friedkin. Of course, I didn't bring that one. His father and Billy Friedkin took a walk, and they said, you know, we need to have a car chase. And they walked and they talked and they walked and they talked, and we followed them, and they were just talking, talking, talking. And one thing that they decided that they weren't going to do, in the motion picture Bullet, you know, the streets are bare. There are no people in the streets. There are no other cars in the streets. I mean, it's bright, sunshine, Technicolor. There's no two ways about it. I'm sorry, Steve McQueen, he didn't drive that. You know, you see his face in there, but he wanted to, but he didn't. And once again, Phil D'Antoni, his dad, is the producer of that movie. So when they decided they were going to do a car chase, they were not going to do it where the streets were empty, and it was not going to be uncomplicated like it was in San Francisco. And they came up with, how about if the perpetrator, the drug dealer, gets on a train? And he gets on the train, and we have the car chase the train. And that's exactly how that was born. Those two created that chase from start to finish. On the train, which you saw on the train, a funny side of it is that we went up on the train. The transit authority wouldn't give us the lanes of where the trains were going north and south, so we could have the center track. So we went up, we put a nurse, we put lunch, we put the extras. My brother is in that scene. My sister is in that scene. We put everybody up there. And the guy that gets shot, not the cop, but the guy that gets shot, he was the real transit authority guy. He was the real transit authority guy. So when we got up there, we're out in the center. You name it, we had every single thing there was, from lunch, soup to nuts. So we're up there about 2 or 3 hours, and a woman comes to us and says, I have to use the bathroom. Guess what?
No bad.
No provisions, no bathroom. So if you were out in, the name of the street? Underdunk. If you were out in Underdunk Avenue there, and you were between the subway trains, that's where they went. They were there for 8, 9 hours up on there. Now, when you see that train coming into the other train, today with the way the tricks that they use, but it's all electronic and it's all done by a computer. What they did there, and we were forbidden to speak about it in the very beginning, was they put the train against the train. And they backed it away, and backed it away, and backed it away, and backed it away. And then they just reversed the film. And they played the film backwards, which sent the train forward and crashing in there. Where you see them all falling down, that's actors being actors. The man who really finds the drugs in the car, he's the real guy. He really found the drugs in the car. He absolutely did. On the car chase, where you see Gene Hackman in there, and that's what you win the Academy Award for. Gene Hackman is pounding away and looking up. That's a car that Gene Hackman is in, and by the way, we had that car transported from Detroit, and it had 37 miles on it, and Gene Hackman wanted to get the feel of the car, so he took the car to start out, no cameras, no nothing, 37 miles. A guy was pulling out, and Gene Hackman put that car right into the subway pillow, right? My brother took Gene Hackman to the hospital. The car was totally damaged. Gene Hackman never drove again. He didn't. And that car was bruised, and that's the car that we used, and I'll tell you how we used it. Billy Freakin manned the camera in that car. There was a camera on the bumper, and I did the driving on the first master. Now, a master is whenever you see that car, wherever it's going to, whatever you see in front of you, you might see an ear or whatever it is, that's my ear. Billy Freakin was on the camera, on the passenger side, holding the camera, and there was a camera on the front bumper. And I just took off in that car, no, you know, no cops in the street, no protection, no nothing. I careened off of a bus. Billy has written, there are 3 books written about Billy. He claims we were doing 90 miles an hour. We were doing 60. And we careened off the car. We went all the way down to as far as we could possibly go. And, you know, it was too dangerous to continue. I was driven sideways off the road, and I went into a fence where there was a junkyard, and it was junkyard, and they had 3 dogs there. The dogs came out in the street. They were very, very vicious. The people in the street were standing up on the cars to get away from the dog, but I kept right on driving. The camera was still going. And now we turn around, and we're going to come back, and Billy says, give it, go, do it. So we start, no, that's the second part, I'm sorry. So we came back doing basically the same thing. So now we're going to get in the car and we're going to drive some of the crashes. And again, Billy is on the camera because the cameraman, according to Billy in his book, was married and he didn't want to put the cameraman in there. He didn't care about me. And so I get in the car. Bill Hickman, the guy that they kill at the end of the movie, the Fed, he's the driver. He's really the stuntman, Bill Hickman.
And he also shows up, he's the driver of Bullet.
He's the driver of Bullet.
He's the one that Steve McQueen's chasing in Bullet. And then...
That's really him doing the driving in Bullet.
And then the third movie in the 7 Ups with Roy Scheider, which is like the third out of this trilogy of car chases. He's the guy again that they're Roy Scheider ends up chasing.
Yeah, it's Bill Hickman. And we got a broken nose and a broken arm on that one, remember?
Yeah.
In the 7 Ups, right? So now he's driving, and we're really going to go for it, and Billy's got the camera. I'm in the passenger seat, and they gave me a mattress, a single mattress to wrap around with the belts, and I'm in the car. And off we go. And as we're going, we're going to do the girl with the carriage, and we're going to do the garbage. We're really going to hit the garbage. Now, how we did that was the girl is standing there with the carriage, and she too, she begins to walk back. She was a stunt woman, by the way. And she begins to walk back. At first she starts out with, and then she's walk backs with the walk back. And the car, we backed up, but not as far. Not as far this time. And obviously, when you go forward with the car and you see her like that, that's how that was done. So now we're driving along and we're going to, on purpose, we're going to hit another car that's driven by a stuntman. And we careen off that car, smash off that car that you saw, and off we go again and we go to the end. Now we turn around and Billy says, give it to me, really give it to me. By now, Bill Hickman is going nuts with this car. We're doing 60 miles an hour through the streets, and I hear the camera, because I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and I got the wire that would shut off the kill switch in the front of the car. See why I make movies with you? So we're going, and I hear Billy Freakin's camera, and it's going. And to me, obviously, we're out of film. And I said, we're out of film. And Billy said, so what? That's the truth. And we kept right on going to the end. That car chase, start to finish, took us 11 days. Wow. 11 days. It will never be done again. In order to actually, on a Sunday, to make where we go over the Brooklyn Bridge, to make that traffic jam up. We don't have Screen Actors Guild actors driving those cars. We just got out there with our shields and we just stopped the traffic. And the horns were blowing and the people, then of course Gene Hackman and them drive up. It's already all stopped up. You can't do that today. In fact, Billy Freakin would later on said of the Brooklyn Bridge, that was the biggest erector set that we ever had to work with. And remember, that picture was made in 1970, 1971. 1970.
That was the first picture too that had the World Trade Center photographed.
True. We had the,
What was going on?
the World Trade Center.
I didn't see it, I was looking for it.
Yeah,
I saw
yeah, it was there.
It's only halfway up or less.
So
It was
you see
about
it up from the-
3/4 of the way up in the World Trade Center. The World Trade Center was up 3/4 of the way. We don't usually, talk about that. Fernando Rey, who plays the Frenchman, Billy Freakin wanted the man whose name escapes me from a French movie, and he sent out the casting director to get that guy. The casting director got the wrong French movie and got this guy, Fernando Rey, who's Mexican. And when Billy, remember, right? Billy said, as of right now, not only is Fernando Rey fired, the casting director's fired, anybody that had anything to do with this is fired, but of course, yeah, we worked that out. Now, the cop that you see that's in the, well, I'm the cop in the garage in the gas station with a lot more hair and sideburns. The captain that keeps saying, you're going back to work, that's the real Eddie Egan, that was the real Popeye. The cop that you saw sitting down, let's say in Washington, D.C., where he puts on, that's the real Sonny Grasso. The other guy that was very, very important in the making of the French Connection case was a guy by the name of Dick Oletta, a really good friend of mine. And Dick Oletta is the one that comes running up and says, oh, he had works in the car, he died in the car. So we all had those little cameo parts. If you didn't work on the French Connection, in the real French Connection, it was, you were put in uniform. Now, in that bar scene where you see all of those black drug addicts that he says put up against the wall through, every single one of them was what?
As a police officer.
New York City, all detectives, all New York City detectives.
Wow.
Absolutely, and the best.
Wow.
I worked with them. Good. I could probably talk for another half hour about the picture, but I'm not going to. Dion, have I missed anything?
No, I think you covered it all. Maybe you could explain to them how, when you're coming from a cop, to
Okay.
transition into
So-
the movies, how it was seamless for you.
Okay, so when I was a cop, I had a couple of hobbies. Before you, dear, chasing girls with Eddie Egan, Popeye around. That's where he got his name from. We would hit all the clubs and stuff. By the way, that was the Copacabana. We would go to the Copacabana all the time. Hardly got any sleep. But a couple of things that I did while I was a cop was I raced cars before, not against cars. I raced cars in Florida against the clock. Quarter miles, airplane gas, railroad tracks welded onto the bottom of the Dodge, so I could drive. And the other thing that I loved to do was I skydived. I have hundreds of skydives. I went to, was going to skydive at Woodstock, but instead I went up there and spent 3 days on a motorcycle. So I had worked on the French Connection case, and I was at a narcotics. I was up in Harlem. I was a homicide detective, and Robin Moore had come down very early on. Robin Moore had come down to what we call narcotics. Narcotics was located in the lower end of Manhattan. We were all undercover. Nobody was supposed to see who we were. There were only 7 of us. Finally, when they made the next picture called The 7 Ups, that's sort of where they got the title from. There were only 7 undercover cops in the whole city of New York. So Robin Moore went down there and he started to write in general about the narcotic problem. And the narcotic problem really got bad or recognized when it moved into white America. Nixon declared war on narcotics in 1972. By 1975, we lost that war. Definitely lost that war. Students, Columbia, the drug problem was major. Major drug problem. We had over 280,000 arrests and people that were using heroin in the city of New York. If you had that many people that had tuberculosis or measles, you'd be quarantined the city. So anyway, I was working up in Harlem, and the book came out. And the book was by Robin Moore, and the book, initially, it was going to be called Egan. And then they changed it to Popeye. And finally, it was Robin Moore who named the book The French Connection. And the first person that we went out in the street to teach how to be a cop was Jimmy Breslin. Yes. The second person was Robert Mitchum. Robert Mitchum was going to be him. To this day, I don't know how they got Gene Hackman. I don't. I knew how they got Roy Scheider, Tony LoBianco, all of them, but I don't know how they got Gene Hackman. When I first met Gene Hackman, I just couldn't believe that he was going to be a New York City cop. I saw him, and I never sang for my father, handlebar mustache, but I was quick to learn never to tell the director how to do a shot or whatever it was, and I was quick to learn that actors are sponges. They're like sponges. They absorb every single thing. And in making Gene Hackman and Roy Scheider and Billy Friedkin, in making them detectives, if you will, and that's when they came to me. And I was working up in Harlem. The book was out. It was going to be a movie. By the way, it was turned down 4 times. 4 times, twice in the same studio. Finally, Zanuck and Brown. Cleopatra had come out, and it was bankrupting 20th Century. They were going out of business on Cleopatra. Elizabeth Taylor, sorry Liz, we put them out of business. And so there was a couple of $1 million laying around, because that's all that picture cost. $2,100,000. They said, take it and go make the French Connection. So when they came to me, they said, okay, come on, you got to make these guys detectives. And that's how I came on the picture. So I worked with Jimmy Breslin, and then finally wound up with Gene Hackman. So Billy Friedkin wanted the real thing. I would learn that in every picture that I worked with him. I went halfway around the world with him, with the Sorcerer, Brinks. He wanted it real. So let's go take a shooting gallery. And a shooting gallery is generally Walking Dead, 20, 25 people, all heroin addicts. They're all in sharing the same room. Those rooms move, and they're all sharing the same needle. Thank God this was all before AIDS. And they're all sharing the same needle. So what we would do is that we would put a couple of detectives in the back, in the yard, and then we would just crash down the door, go on in there, generally fire 1 or 2 shots in the air to get their attention, tell them all to hit the floor, all the needles and all the drugs would come along, and we would make one of them, take a broom and sweep it all up. There were generally guns in there, but they weren't the firepower you see today. Sweep it all up, and then we would charge everybody with the possession. Of course, it would all be thrown out in court, but a lot of those people were wanted. We registered them. So we would be going in there, and we took Gene and Roy and Billy Friedkin, and we would just literally crash the door like I had done hundreds of times. I'm standing here telling you, not bragging, just giving you some facts. I personally handled, arrested, and broke 309 homicide cases. This is when 2,000 people a year were being killed in the city of New York. Well, anyway, we would go in there, and I would be the first through the door, always. Anybody get in front of me? Never. I wasn't going to let any of my team or partners get hurt. I would go in there. Son of a bitch, I look around the door, there goes Billy Freakin'. Running alongside of me. I mean, you know, and on one or two of them, unbeknownst to me, Eddie gave Billy his gun. You know, I said, Eddie, you know, I got my hands full here. We're trying to make these guys detectives, not killers. You know, and that's how they did it. Now, a small part of this story is why I've set this up is that eventually we would wind up in the precinct, and Roy Scheider was, okay, I can print them. I'll help do the print. You know, that's how they become detectives. Billy Freakin' wanted to know everything. Billy Freakin' would interview them. By the time we made this picture, Billy Freakin' could have been a New York City narcotic detective. Gene Hackman wanted no part of it. Gene Hackman, he was a Marine, by the way. He wanted no part of it. I'm not talking Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative. Gene Hackman wanted no part of this. And at one time he said to me, what happens to these people? I said, well, we try to get them down to court immediately before they get violently sick. I said, we can't feed them because we would be broke. You know how many times we do this? You know how many hundreds? We can't feed them. He said, can I feed them? I said, no, you can't. You can't do that. He says, you mean that they now go down to court and they go to jail? And I said, yes. Gene Hackman walked out of the precinct. He wanted no part of this whatsoever. He didn't see the problem. He really did not. I mean, does that make Gene Hackman like a bad person? Is that because he comes from Hollywood? Well, so did Roy Scheider and so did Billy Freakin'. You know what I'm saying? But Gene was very, very reluctant. And very early on, when I say we, collectively, we had a problem with Gene Hackman and Eddie Egan. You know, we would do a scene and Gene would be in it, and in the scene, and Eddie Egan would do it. Nah, that's not how it's done, Jesus Christ. You know, that really, I'm talking of a guy I loved. I was the best man at his second wedding. So, no, there was a lot of difficulty. But what I learned, the more controversy that we had, the more, no, you're not supposed to do it that way, it turned out to be better. Whereas if we were all on the same page, of course I didn't know this from this, making that movie back then, but I learned, and looking back, I saw that if everybody said, yes, let's do it this way, you wouldn't see what you have seen up here. And remember, this picture was made in 1971. We got to be talking about 45, 46 years ago.
I was 17 years old.
Okay, Roy, you know, as you know, Roy shot, half of them are no longer with us. Billy's still with us, and Gene is still with us, but not Roy, not Fernando Rey. Marcel Bavuzzi, by the way, the killer, was a big French actor. I had an occasion to go to Cannes, and I said, damn it, I said, I'm going over to Marseille where this started. I took the bus and I went over to Marseille and I made my inquiries and stuff. Frog won. You have to understand that the case was made in the 60s. So from the 60s to the end of the Second World War was only 25 years. And so some inquiries that I made, Frog 1 was in the French underground fighting the Nazis in the Second World War. To them, he was a hero. He was a smuggler. He smuggled arms for the Free French to fight the Germans. You know, so no matter what he did over here in America, over there, he was a hero. And he was on what they call the Free French radio. He was on there. I mean, he was wanted over here. Nobody was gonna go over there and bring him back. No, that didn't happen. But he got away. The most that anybody got was Patsy Fuca. I'm gonna tell you this. The most we got was Patsy Fuca. He got 5 years. Patsy Fuca got 5 years. While he was in jail, his wife would visit him. And Patsy Fuca was assigned to just 3 guards. Just 3 guards. And his wife would come and visit him. By the time Patsy Fuca got out of jail, she had divorced him and married one of the guards. Now, we were making the movie. I was working up in Harlem. I was working with Sonny. And the desk called us from downstairs, and they said, Patsy Fuca's downstairs. He wants to see you guys. We said, okay, did you search? Oh, of course. He's got no gun. He said, yeah, okay, let him up. So he came upstairs. He's a Brooklyn guy. He was talking to Sonny, not to me. He says, yeah, hey, Grasso, you're going to make this movie, right? I hear you're going to make this movie. It's in the book. And Sonny was saying, yeah. And I'm watching him walking around. At any minute, I think he's going to jump over the fence, choke him. So I'm watching him. And he says, and when you make this movie, he says, Burt Lancaster better play me. Out the door he went. I got 25 more of those, but I'm going to stop right now. And if there are any questions about anything, I would be glad to answer. Yes, Tom.
It's probably wrong, but I had heard in my years growing up that the woman with the carriage accidentally got on the set and...
Not true.
Okay.
Not true.
And
Yes, there a lot of accidents when we drove, when we did that. We stole it. We stole the subway. You can't do that anymore. We did all of that. But that was very, very planned. And Tom, I got to tell you, nothing but safety in mind for that. Nothing but safety in mind. Yep.
No.
No.
I know what he said. He was
Yeah.
mentioned.
No,
That
she
story,
was
though, I've read it in at least 3 or 4 of
Oh,
film
okay, I must have read it
publications
somewhere.
say that it's absolutely true that that woman walked
Well,
on
you-
set.
there's 2 scenes with ladies with
we
carriages.
when we drove over over onto the curb, there was a small wooden platform about this big, and the garbage and the cans were here. I was in the passenger seat at this time, and Bill Hickman was driving, and he missed the platform that went up there, caught the curb, and we lost a tire on that, and half the garbage went over. That was a very expensive shot. So we then had to go back and use, with no time to put that whole axle back together. So we went back and we used another car. In fact, it was a slightly different color, but it happened so fast that you don't see it. Another thing, when this picture played across the country, I went on a tour. St. Louis, we made it all the way into Texas and stuff like that. And to show you how people pay attention to a movie, remember that car in France, that you saw that car in France? The drugs wind up, it comes off on a boat, it's never been in New York, it's never been in the United States. Well, we were doing a radio show, and I'm going to say someplace in Texas, and we would get calls, and this person called in and said, just what I told you. That car started out in France? Yeah, it did. This guy did, yeah, it did. How come it's got a New York State inspection license on it? It's this big, isn't it? They picked it out. That wasn't the only one. That wasn't the only one we got. So people, you can't sometimes...
Bothers people.
Oh, they spot these things. They absolutely know it.
And that was back in the day before VCRs or DVDs.
Exactly. If you didn't see it on the big screen, you didn't see it. Chris and I have movies together. Heart. We did Heart. Brad Davis. We raised the money ourselves, $1 million. We did that movie. We worked on One Down, Two to Go. Vigilante. I had said to Sarah, but like the apple don't fall far from the tree and stuff like that. Writer, producer, absolutely. Music, the whole number. Chris and I have done a number of pictures together. When we do those independent movies, here's what the problem is. A lot of those pictures are non-Screen Actors Guild. So now you see that picture is playing there, we're not gonna get paid. We don't get paid. Every time there's French Connection, I don't mean tonight, you know, we get, we get something. You had a question, sir?
Yes. You said that you were one of 7 members of the narcotic division
That was, you undercover,
undercover.
only 7.
How were you chosen of those 7 to participate?
He was a paratrooper,
Yeah, okay, Chris.
he was a Green Beret, and he knew what he was doing.
We,
Excuse my French.
I became a cop at 21 years of age. And I'm born and raised in the city. I wouldn't say that the streets would fool a cop, but in all honesty, if you had a cop that was born out in Hicksville, Long Island, and he was now being put into the city, I'm not going to say that he wouldn't know a prostitute, or you know, but he wouldn't know numbers. He wouldn't know who didn't belong there, who wasn't correct. That was the word that we always used. Wasn't correct. So I made this gun collar. I was in court. A captain came up to me. Don't even know his name. He came up to me and he said, "How old are you?" And I said, "I'm 22. I'll be 22. He says, "How long you on the job?" I said, "1.5 years. Where do you work?" I said, "Spanish Harlem." He said, we're going to use you at undercover. Who's the commanding officer, blah, blah, blah. I would say 48 hours later, wherever I was working, I was told to report down to a precinct. I went down to the precinct and I was interviewed. I was interviewed by Ira Bluth, who would later become the chief of police. I was interviewed. Mario Biaggi, who was a congressman, was the lieutenant in charge of the narcotic unit. And so when I went down there, where do you work? How old are you? What do you do? Blah, blah, blah. Do you know what heroin is? Yes, I do. Do you know what a needle is? You're undercover. And that's how I became. There were only 7 of us at the time. There were 300, almost 300 detectives in there. The problem with the narcotic unit is that we were working in buildings that were built in the 1930s. We had equipment from the 40s, Remington typewriters, carbon paper, our own printing machines. This was the 60s. If it felt good, do it. We had a professor there, Columbia students were using LSD by dropping the drugs, eye drops, into their eyes. The drug problem really exploded in the 60s. The people that were leading us, remember I told you the 30s, the 40s, the 60s, well, their thinking was that of the 50s. Father knows best. You know, I mean, the South was really exploding. Andy Griffin was doing a show. You know, the sheriff, nothing's wrong, everything is all right down at the South. Huge, big drug problem here in the city of New York. Big drug. But the people that were leading us, you know, Father knows best. No. That was almost like, you know, a ghetto crime. But once it got into white America, and from that point on, we played catch up. We never got out in front of us. So I would go out, and I could go anywhere, and I was dubbed, they would make a picture about this, I was dubbed Prince of the City. We could go anywhere. I went into Alphabet City, basically white and Spanish, and it took me 1 or 2 days. I figured it out, I looked, and I was buying half loads of heroin for $75 a half load. My personal story, in Alphabet City, I went up to the top floor, I bought a half load, and I was coming down the stairs, I saw sneakers and hands coming up. I knew I was in deep trouble, so I ran to the roof, and I managed to get over a couple of roofs before they could get up there. I came down the fire escape, I lost my backup, I came out onto the street, which happened to be Delancey Street. I was passing Ratner's at the time, which you saw here, and I saw everybody sort of moping around. moping around. I really didn't, I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was. I went to the 7th precinct, I turned in my half load to the sergeant and I said, what's going on? And I gotta use a word here, okay? He said, some fuck just shot the President of the United States. So I was buying drugs when Kennedy was killed. But that was like 1963, but the drug problem would explode. The narcotic unit would definitely grow. Out of the 7 of us, there was just one Spanish guy and one black guy, and the 5 of us were white. But I did buy, I bought drugs in Harlem. It became quite easy for me to go up and buy the drugs. I played the role pretty good.
Randy,
Yes.
when I saw the film Serpico, where are you in this? I don't know.
I had worked one day with Serpico, and then I would have nothing to do with him. The portrayal of Serpico is that he was the only honest cop. He was the only honest cop, you know, out of 30,000 of us.
And also, it seemed he was the only undercover narcotics guy. I mean, they portrayed.
He did. He did become a narcotic cop, and he worked in what they would call Needle Park. We had these various parks around,
I remember that.
and you know, and the people would go into these parks and they would like shoot up. Now, why we didn't bust those things? When we found a place that was dealing in heroin, why we didn't go and take it out was because we fed off that place. You know, we take that out, and the day after tomorrow he's someplace else, and we got to look for it. So it was there, and everybody that was going out there buying, we waited till they came 2 or 3 blocks away, boom, we dropped them, we dropped them. We got heavy, we got fat off of that. We fed off of that location. And then when it looked like it was going to dry up, or people were accusing us of taking money, because then we would go up and we would take out that location. Now, in the picture Serpico, you see the scene where Serpico gets shot and the 2 cops are standing by? Well, those 2 cops sued that picture and got every single penny, undisclosed amount of money, because that never happened. That never happened. So Serpico, we understand each other now. We talk to each other. You know, he's running for mayor, but Serpico, I'll let it go at that, you know?
Well, yeah, in the film, though, it made it seem as if there was no other undercover
It's not true.
people at that time, and he was the one that, do you remember that?
Yeah, it's not
it gave you the idea that...
It's not true.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you what the undercover is today. I mean, we have undercover in Puerto Rico. We have undercover in Portugal. We have a host of undercover in Mexico. We have a host in Miami. Absolutely. The drug trade has moved from the Italians, and it went to the Chinatown. It went to China. Jamaicans took over. I would believe, without casting dispersions, the Albanians are now running the drug.
You said you worked with Serpico one day, but you wouldn't do it anymore, right?
Yeah, I worked just one day with Serpico.
And you wouldn't do it again?
No. Serpico, no. I work with Serpico in the street. No. I prefer to work alone. I did work alone.
Oh, I see.
Yes,
The character that Fernando Rey played, Charnier, in the film,
yes.
and in the film says he was never caught. Did anyone ever find him after? Did anything happen to him?
Nothing. He made it back to Marseille, and he became a radio announcer on the Free French radio. He was a hero from the Second World War.
And so the law would never touch him.
Well, look, it was international, and you know, it was bad enough that we were locking up French citizens. You know, that's the way that they looked at it. You know, we got it. Case closed. That was it.
So Randy, French Connection 2, where you got killed?
No, French Connection 2 is totally all made up. Make believe.
Okay.
There's a French Connection too?
Yeah.
John Frankenheimer.
John Frankenheimer directed that, yeah.
So that's all.
Yeah, no Rorschach, no nothing, just Gene going over.
Yeah, addicted to heroin.
Yeah.
Further viewing for Randy, tell him your other Al Pacino connection that, you know, was based off of your case. Maybe 2. Right?
Oh, yeah. While I was working homosexuals, which were back in the closet in the day, they were being killed. The meat market today is a very fashionable place to go to within the city, the meat market. They have all the clubs. Well, back then, homosexuals, we had 6. They cut them up, it was horrible. They were floating in the river and stuff like that. So I was working narcotics undercover, and I got pulled by the district attorney's office, and they told me to, you're going to take this. This is the case you're going to take. We believe it's 2 cops that are out doing this. One black, one white. They were called the Salt and Pepper Team, and so I went to work there. They set me up with an apartment in Bleecker Street. I stayed for 4 months. I went into that world. I went as deep as I could into that world, and I got lucky. I got them. I got the 2 of them. I caught the 2 of them. In fact, that's how I got the Gold Shield. Many, many years later, they made a movie called Cruising, and that's loosely based on me and Al Pacino. And I think that was not the first time I met Al Pacino on The Godfather. I met him on Cruising while we were doing Cruising. Yes.
Yeah, and he's also Serpico.
Yeah, Serpico.
Yeah.
No, I refuse to work the picture Serpico. I wouldn't work. Okay.
We have to take one more question. We have to
Sure.
finish up here.
How many awards did this film win?
5, the big ones,
Wow.
nominated for 7, the big ones. The Last Picture Show. But Jeff Bridges don't win, whatchamacallit wins the supporting,
Right.
support. He beat Roy Scheider out for that. Otherwise, it took the picture, it took the producer, it took the director, it took the actor, and screenwriter. And there were 2 lesser ones that they didn't get. Yeah.
And sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I lucked out because in 1971 and 1972, the 2 biggest made was The French Connection and The Godfather, and I happened to be associated.
Worked them back to back.
And
You worked them back to back.
I worked them back to back.
And you thought that's the way it was.
I thought
Everyone was going to win.
I thought that's the way. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight and putting up and listening. And
Please check out Wayne.
But what we were able to do was to add the lines of never trust anybody. At least we were able to get that in there.